Welcome! You are listening to Beneath the Surface podcast with your host, Carter Russell.
Luiza is a functional medical doctor from Brazil who is currently living in Australia to pursue her PhD on medicinal cannabis and brain health. After 9 years of studying, Luiza sees the importance of bringing a holistic approach towards modern medicine. In this episode, Carter and Luiza cover a full range of topics. They begin with Luiza's journey into medicine and medicinal cannabis, how cannabis works as a healing modality, and the potential harms of recreational use. Lou and Carter delve into today's mental health crisis, discussing cheap dopamine, narrow medical views, human disconnection, overstimulation, and much more. Lastly, Carter finishes off with a rapid-fire round where Luiza provides her wisdom around supplements, antidepressant alternatives, practical steps for positive mental health, thoughts around legalizing cannabis, benefits of looking at people in the eye, and much more. Time to begin.
Luiza, it's a privilege to have you here today. My first doctor on the podcast. You've been studying for 9 years now, is that correct?
Yes.
Long time.
Long time, yes.
So cool. From my understanding, you grew up in Brazil, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. I've been living in Australia for only 1 year.
Amazing. How are you liking it?
I love it. Now I love it. Yes.
Do you want to talk to me about your childhood a little bit and explain what got you into studying medicine?
Yeah, that's perfect. First of all, thank you so much for having me here. I'm really privileged as well to be here. So I grew up in a family of traditional medical doctors. So my dad is a neurosurgeon and my mom is a cardiologist. So, and it's me, I'm the oldest daughter, and then I have 2 younger sisters. And from the beginning, we would always be listening to my parents talking about their interesting cases. So that would be basically what we would talk about during our dinners together, like discussing medical cases and the new medications and all of that. So I think that I was introduced to this whole medical environment since I was very little, and it all felt very natural to me. So when it came the time, I didn't even know what else to choose besides medicine. So I got into medical school when I was actually 17. Yeah, so yeah, pretty early. Yes, I think that's it.
Yeah, that is young. 17 to start studying medicine.
A kid, yes.
Yeah. And what did you find when you started studying medicine? How was that experience for you? Was there any problems that you found going into that industry, or was it all, did you just love it?
Yeah, I think that looking back now with the knowledge that I have today, I was a kid, like learning about it. So everything was pretty new and pretty exciting. But I think that the more I actually start doing the practical part of medicine, where I would actually get to work in hospitals in poor areas in Brazil, I would see that the reality was not all flowers and beautiful as the theory. So I think that I've always been really curious about like life overall. And I remember questioning, like making a lot of questions to my teachers, and then they would be like, no, it has always been like that. Like, who are you to question that? And I'm like, that's like the explanation as like, oh, it has always been like that, has never been enough for me to be willing to keep doing the same. Like, so I would question a lot of things that were done, such as like small things, oh, the prescription of milk to increase calcium. And I would learn about like the different types and sources of calcium. That's just one explanation. The lack of investigation about the root cause of different symptoms, the way that people would talk about mental health as something totally separated from physical health. I think that's like, and the whole idea of curing and healing everything with just one magic pill had never made a lot of sense to me. So yeah, I think that medicine, the whole like health care, not industry, but everything related to health is always changing. So nutrition, medicine, and I was always into learning what was new and what was updated. And yeah, I think that whenever I would question, even my own parents, they would be like, why are you questioning this? Like, no, we should be prescribing statins for like high cholesterol, period. Like, yeah, stuff like that. So I'm like, oh, but what about the side effects? What about like CoQ10 and stuff like that? So yeah, I think that even though it was really fascinating for me, and I would always try to keep myself very humble because I was in the beginning of my career, I would like this whole idea of like keep doing this because we've always been doing it had never like resonated with me. I don't know if it makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. I think that's really important. And that's like good on you for keeping that mind, the curious mind. It's like the childlike mind, you know, they're always asking why this or questioning what we do. And I think the more expertise you gain, the more likely you have this narrow vision of this is how it's done, this is how it's been working, this is how we're going to continue to do it. So to be able to combine knowledge and still ask questions, I think is a really great process that you've been doing. Yeah. So did that lead you to study different types of medicine or?
Yeah, that's it. Because I would have access to the best doctors in Brazil and in the world, but I would feel like no one could actually explain before I started studying functional medicine. No one could actually explain why I would have to take six times per year antibiotics, and why I was always with a sore throat, and why I had this irritable bowel syndrome. So no one was actually able to tell me that. They would just give me a pill and that was it. So yeah, that's pretty much why I got into functional medicine in the first place, so that I can actually understand the root cause of my own healing journey, so that I could heal myself and then to be able to help other people. And then I found out about like a lot of genetic mutations that I had, like the main cause of my dysbiosis. So I call it gut dysbiosis. Yeah. So yeah, and my life became 100% better. I think that the last time that I took antibiotics was 3 years ago. So that's really good compared to someone who would take it 6 times a year. Yeah. I really got much more into like what foods I should be taking. I took the food sensibility test so that I could understand what was going on. I understood more about my microbiome, like all of my nutrients, vitamins, what was lacking, what was in excess. And that's pretty much the medicine that I do today, the root cause medicine, something that I'm really passionate about.
That's awesome. I like how you've had your own experience with the maybe more mainstream medical system not serving you. I think it would be hard if you're a doctor who's meant to be healing people, but you've got your own issues that you can't solve. Yes. I think I can understand that being hard. But it looks like that was given to you so that you could explore this other pathway, which has turned out to be, sounds like a lot better for you.
Yeah, for sure.
So what does integrative medicine touch on more that the standard system of medical doesn't touch on? Yeah.
Okay, so the traditional medical system is really efficient and good for acute cases. So if someone needs a surgery, if someone has a severe infection and needs a specific treatment. But most conditions that affect people on the daily basis, like chronic inflammation, like low grade, medium grade inflammation, autoimmune diseases, all sorts of neurological and psychiatric conditions, they're all chronic diseases. And standard medicine tries to give the same approach as like take a pill to those chronic conditions, and that simply does not work. Because when it comes to those chronic conditions, we gotta understand why this is happening. So like, oh, okay, you're feeling really tired. I shouldn't be prescribing you a pill to make you feel like, let me just give you a stimulant so that I can like study better. No, what's going on? Like, what's your lifestyle like? How is your diet? How do you exercise? Do you experience any traumas in your life? How is your environment like? Do you have any lack of nutrients and vitamins? Do you have any chronic infections? And yeah, so how's your hormones like? This plays a big role in all of that. So functional and integrative medicine just looks at the person as a whole. So I'm more interested about what's going on with you as a person instead of just the disease that's affecting you. And of course, sometimes we gotta use tools from standard medicine to help with the symptoms, but we'll always add interventions that will look at you as a whole to try to not only properly heal the condition, but to avoid other conditions to happen. Because one thing that happens is that if someone is really inflamed, and if you give like a cortisol or like a pill to help with inflammation instead of just looking at the root cause, this inflammation will manifest in another way. So it's almost like you have room on fire, and then traditional medicine just closes the door. Like if you don't turn down the fire, if you just don't like do something about the fire itself, you start burning other rooms, and this will manifest as a burn in another part of the house. Does it make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I like that analogy. I think Paul Chek calls it the pain doctor.
Yes.
So it's like the pain or the inflammation is showing, the symptoms are usually showing you that something's out of balance in the body. And so treating that really seems to be the way to go. I want to talk about the study that you're doing at the moment around medicinal cannabis. Do you want to talk a little bit about what got you into that field firstly, and then we'll talk about what you're doing today?
Yeah, sure. My mom was diagnosed with depression by the beginning of COVID. She experienced a lot of losses and challenges in her life. And even though she is a traditional doctor, she didn't want to take any medication. And she knew that I was already studying functional medicine and I was open-minded about it. So she asked me to study about medicinal cannabis because her friend's dog was actually using it for pain. Yes, I remember saying like, Mom, do you really want me to study cannabis because your friend's dog is using it? She's like, yeah, that's it. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. You know that I don't smoke cannabis. It's not my thing. I don't even know if it's legal here because we definitely did not get any of those information in medical school. So yeah, I promised her that I would actually give it a try. And whenever I decide to study something, like properly study something, I always try to learn from the best. So I started taking classes from doctors in California, in Europe, in Uruguay, people who have been prescribing cannabis for over 20 years, who have been studying it for ages. And I really got into it. I prescribed it to my mom. She was 100% healed. And yeah, so that made me really passionate and committed to the cause, to promoting like good quality knowledge and education about medicinal cannabis. And that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing here in Australia. I'm studying how medicinal cannabis works in the brain.
Awesome. That would have been pretty cool to be able to help with your mum's depression. I imagine that would have felt really nice.
Yeah.
And it's such a interesting way that you've got into this work. It's almost like another calling. Your mum has depression, and then she asks for your help, and you see the success behind this kind of medication, and then you decide to study it. So talk to me a little bit about your studies today and how you believe that medical cannabis can help someone.
Cool. So my study today is related to medicinal cannabis and brain connectivity in people with anxiety. So when we talk about the brain, like what's brain connectivity? So the different brain parts are connected with the other ones by those like almost like wires. And this is what's called structural brain connectivity. So it's pretty like self-explanatory. So just like the connections between and within different brain areas. And some preliminary studies have shown that cannabis can actually increase connections in some specific connections, for example, related to perceived attention, related to being able to some connections related to emotional control, and some really, really important connections so that we can have better quality of life. And then my studies basically analyzing people's brains who are using medicinal cannabis for anxiety and comparing those brains with people with anxiety but who are not under any specific medication. So I'm willing to compare those two brains to see if actually those connections have been improved or not. So yes,
Wow.
we still don't have any information about that because I am at the part where I'm actually recruiting people so that they can be scanned. But hopefully I'll be able to share good things very soon.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
And so someone with anxiety, do they have weaker brain connectivity? Is that usually what the problem with anxiety is?
We don't know. So there are some studies, especially in animals, showing that people with anxiety have abnormal connection between the limbic system, so an animal part of the brain responsible for us to responsible for us to help us react to stressors, and the prefrontal cortex, so the part of the brain that's responsible for us to actually respond to what's happening instead of just reacting to what's happening. So this abnormal connection between this animal part of the brain and the more like aware and conscious part of the brain might be one of the explanations behind anxiety disorders. So yes, we will look at it in my study, but yes, unfortunately.
Is that called hypofrontality? Is that, because I know when I did my studies around people using pornography, they had the limbic part of the brain, so this, in our sense, the reward center, was it was in charge. So rather than going, I'll give you an example. The monkey brain or the limbic part of the brain would say, I want to eat that whole chocolate bar. And then it would go to the prefrontal cortex, and the prefrontal cortex would be like rationale. So it'd be like, hang on, we're not going to eat the whole block. We're going to eat just the square. But people who have a flooded dopamine system in the limbic part of the brain don't have as much self-control. It's like the limbic brain runs the show.
Yes.
Is that similar to
anxiety?
Okay, so that's also can increase the levels of anxiety, having the limbic part of the brain run the system.
Yes, because anxiety is pretty much characterized by you being worried about the future, even though there's no big signs of danger. You cannot rationalize it. You're just really afraid of driving. You're just really afraid of like speaking public. And of course, there are some challenges, but not in a way that when people have anxiety disorders, it actually paralyzes them.
Yep.
So yes, it's also related to this connection between the two areas of the brain as well.
Interesting. And so have you seen any studies on how medicinal cannabis can help with that? And do
Yeah.
you want to touch on that?
So this will be the first study related to anxiety disorders.
Oh,
That's
okay.
really exciting.
You're running the first study.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
This is very exciting.
Yeah.
But there are some similar studies for chronic pain, epilepsy, autism disorder, and multiple sclerosis as well. So an autoimmune disease from the brain. Yes.
Great. That's and you're running the first anxiety. That'll be good. I'll be really interested to see what
Yes.
that comes out with. So if we think about other studies, what have those studies shown? And maybe is there one for depression? Have they done a study? No. So your mum is kind of an experiment then when it healed.
Yes, for sure.
Experiment. What study or information is there out there about what studies are out there relating to the benefits of medicinal cannabis that you've seen?
Yeah. So there's a lot of theoretical studies showing tons of benefits, but when it comes to clinical, like randomized, controlled, double-blind, controlled studies, this requires a lot of money. And we have to say that we have a big industry that's not actually willing to invest a lot of money into a plant that may be able to take a lot of people out of opioids and psychiatric medications. So that's something that's important for us to mention as well. And also, the whole endocannabinoid medicine field is pretty new. So even though cannabis has been used for ages and it's included in both traditional Chinese and Ayurvedic medicine books, no one knew how it worked until the 1990s. So imagine this is like a baby in medicine. So in the 1990s, we found out that we have this whole system in our body, like a widespread system in our bodies called the endocannabinoid system. And the system main goal is to maintain the inner balance. So the inner balance of the brain's chemicals and inner balance of our body's different systems. So it's like the different systems so if you imagine our body as an orchestra, each system will be a different instrument, and then the endocannabinoid system will be the conductor. So it is really important to make sure that each part of the body is working properly by itself and then along with the others. So, and that's pretty new. And I feel like now the cannabis has been more and more used by people. It has been shown to have tons of clinical benefits for a lot of people and for a lot of different medical conditions. Industries are getting into it, and therefore we're pretty much now going to have better and a bigger studies about cannabis. But one thing that I like a lot about cannabis is that it is a functional medicine. Cannabis works according to the functional medicine approach because it looks at the person and it treats the person as a whole. So if you think about someone with fibromyalgia, for example, so nowadays chronic pain, in Australia, chronic pain is the main indication for cannabis prescription.
Okay.
And for example, fibromyalgia, migraines, cancer-related pains, arthritis, so stuff like that. And if you think about a woman, for example, a 30-year-old woman with fibromyalgia, let's say that this woman has a pain level 7 out of 10, and she had to stop working because she was feeling a lot of pain every day. She is having problems with all of the relationships around her because she is not able to focus in any conversation because she's always feeling the pain. She gained a lot of weight because she's now compensating the pain and this anxiety that's caused by the pain in food. And when this person, and let's just say that this woman is taking 4 different medications to help her deal with all of those different symptoms, because that's what traditional medicine does. Like, it has 1 different pill for each condition, and then the person starts taking like 10 different pills. So when you add cannabis to this woman's life, let's just say that maybe her pain level was not 0 out of 10, like it was 7 out of 10. Now it is 3, 4 out of 10. But this woman is sleeping better. Her social connections improved. She is having lower anxiety levels, and therefore now she's able to eat better. Now that she's not feeling a lot of pain, she's actually able to exercise again. She even found a new job. So, and she decreased the number of medication that she was taking. So, cannabis has the ability to help the person as a whole, especially when we're talking about like medicinal cannabis, or something that is that has high quality grade, so that it has medicinal grade. So it's a high quality product that has been tested and verified against mold and all sorts of toxins. That's one of the reasons why we have so many misinformation about cannabis.
Mm-hmm. I was going to ask you about that actually. I was going to ask, for someone who self-prescribes themselves with anxiety or depression or pain and decide to buy weed and smoke it, what's the difference between someone smoking weed and medicinal cannabis?
So there are a lot of differences between medicinal cannabis and recreational cannabis use. To start with the purpose. So usually people who are using cannabis recreationally, and unfortunately in most countries they have to obtain it illegally, and therefore the quality of the cannabis that they're using is not tested. And even though they say that it's tested, so for example, cannabis is legal in California, medicinal cannabis is legal in California since 1996. And every year, the FDA pretty much needs to shut down a lot of companies that has been selling CBD oil, but then when they're testing it, it's coconut oil filled with toxins and like some essential cannabis oil, something like that. But it doesn't have any, so it doesn't have any properties there. And the person is increasing their risk of being intoxicated rather than being benefited. Benefited?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So, yeah. When people are using cannabis medicinally, their purpose is not getting high. Like their purpose is actually avoid getting high while having some benefits, as something that can help with anxiety levels, insomnia, chronic pain, something that can help them cope during the day. And when it comes to medicinal cannabis, the quality is tested against, as I told you, mold, bacteria intoxication, pesticides, and all different types of toxins that by themselves cause a lot of mental and physical problems, such as infertility.
Wow.
And so the main, of course, some people, and that's a tricky question because there's no specific right answer. For example, some people smoke cannabis to sleep because they have insomnia. How can you say that this person is not using cannabis medicinally?
Yeah.
Even though it's buying like from a drug dealer or whatever, the goal is to have something that is not, the main goal is not to get high or anything, it's to actually help with a symptom and with a condition. So, but nowadays there are like in pretty much all like Western countries and Australia as well, Australia, the US, all over Europe, America overall, it's possible to have access to medicinal cannabis, so with a higher grade, and therefore preventing the person to have a higher amount of side effects and problems with that. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. So someone who's smoking marijuana usually has to buy it illegally, which means you don't know what toxins are in it. It could be mold and all these different things. Is there any difference between medicinal cannabis and smoking cannabis?
Yeah.
And what would that difference be? Or why should someone go down the medicinal cannabis rather than just smoking marijuana or cannabis, smoking cannabis? Yeah.
Okay, so
Apart from the toxins, yeah.
yeah, so there are some differences. First of all, to start with root. So when you smoke something, when you smoke cannabis, the start of the effect is around a few minutes, and then it lasts up to 4 hours the most. When we use cannabis medicinally, most of the products are sublingual, so oral sublingual oil. And this oil takes around 15 minutes to start its effect, but then it lasts for up to 12 hours. And therefore, someone does not have to be smoking something during the whole day. You can just take something twice a day, and that will also help with the symptoms. Second of all, if you're smoking cannabis, if you don't have a specific tool that will control the temperature by which cannabis is being heated, if, for instance, someone is just rolling a joint and smoking it, because of the high temperature of that smoke, it can actually create lung problems. It can damage the lungs. So that's another issue that medicinal cannabis, especially with the oil one, or if it's a flower that's being prescribed with a specific tool to help to heat the flower in a specific temperature, it helps to decrease all of those lung intoxication effects that may happen. Third thing, even though this is a study from Australia, they found out a lot of people that they tested a lot of oils that had been prescribed for kids with epilepsy in the illegal market. So that was not legal market, illegal market. And pretty much 60% of all of those oils did not contain CBD, which is, yes. So imagine, yes. So that's pretty, even though people are doing it in a good will and they're thinking that the oil has specifically what it's supposed to have, sometimes it doesn't. That's why it needs to be tested.
Yeah.
So that you can avoid that some person, imagine a kid with epilepsy gets intoxicated. So that's huge.
Jeez, yeah.
Yeah. And when we talk about cannabis, we're talking about a plant that has over 700 compounds that interact with your body in different ways. And when you smoke a joint, for example, you pretty much evaporate 70% of all of those compounds, and you're pretty much just using THC. So the most studied compounds of cannabis are THC and CBD. So THC is a compound that, yes, especially in lower amounts, has medicinal properties. It has analgesic properties. It can help with like relaxation. It helps with insomnia. It helps with cancer-related symptoms. But it's not only THC. Like when you're using cannabis recreationally, you're pretty much using a high amount of THC without the counterbalance of CBD. And on the other hand, when we're talking about medicinal cannabis, we're talking about products that, yes, they may contain THC, but they usually will also contain the other cannabinoids such as CBD, CBG, CBN, THCV. So a lot of other cannabinoids that have really beneficial effects to your body and the brain. So that's why when people read something like, oh, cannabis caused this, like cannabis causes like this type of problem, I really encourage people to actually look further down is like, what cannabinoid is this person talking about? Is this study talking about someone who have been buying cannabis from the drug dealers filled with a lot of other stuff that's not pure or anything like that, versus someone who is taking a full spectrum CBD oil or something like that? So yeah, those are two really different contexts that sometimes can be mixed, the recreational and the medicinal use. But yes.
That makes sense. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I can see how different the two are, especially if you're getting all those other different compounds through the medicinal way. Just quickly, if you were to take medicinal marijuana or medicinal cannabis, I understand that there's probably different types, but do people still get a feeling of high, or is it a more, so say that lady, we'll go back to that lady you were talking about, the 30-year-old lady who's got pain, then she takes this medicinal cannabis and it reduces her pain a lot. Are there any symptoms of feeling high?
It really depends. So CBD is a non-psychotoxic compound, which means that it will not cause any symptoms of feeling high.
Yep.
CBG is another compound like that as well. THC, yes, it causes, it can cause the feeling, the euphoric feeling, so the feeling of feeling high. But when you add CBD with it, it decreases the side effects of THC. So yes, the main goal is for the person, I don't want any of my patients to be feeling high.
Yeah.
I want them to actually have a better quality of life. So if someone is really sensitive to THC, and I usually prescribe a higher level of THC only if the person has cancer, or because a THC in a higher level, it's really good for nausea and vomiting with chemotherapy. It's really, really good. And if it's a palliative care patient, so if the patient is dying, and sometimes it can be a little high, but I think that's part of the medicinal part of cannabis, especially for people who are suffering. Yeah, they're going to be happier. They're going to be like more euphoric in a good way. So that shouldn't be a problem. But besides that, if the person is, it's not the main goal, like you can definitely have a really, really good treatment with medicinal cannabis without feeling high or euphoric or anything like that at all. That's pretty much the main goal.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think that's probably a common misconception people get, like medicinal marijuana, they must be getting high. It must be like controlled amounts of high to avoid their pain. But it's interesting how if you balance the different parts of the plant, you can get the medicinal sides without the feelings of euphoria and high, and drowsiness and all the other things that come with that. Would you mind sharing some of your success stories or a success story that you've had with a patient who's gone down the route of medicinal cannabis?
Yeah. So I have a few very cool stories. The one that I thought about now was a patient. She is a 40-year-old. Now she's 42, so 42-year-old autism patient. She had a problem while her mom was in her delivery during her birth. So that's why she had a brain trauma by the way that her birth happened, and therefore she developed autism. And yes, and when I first saw her, she was under 7 antipsychotic drugs.
7?
Yes, she was self-harming herself.
Okay. And
she would scream to all of her family. And when you have someone in your life with any sort of psychiatric or any sort of condition, especially the ones that traditional medicine cannot help, it's so frustrating because it affects the whole community and family and people around this person. And with this woman, she's now my patient for over 2 years. She's not taking any antipsychotic drugs anymore besides cannabis. She's taking 2 different oils, one with a higher amount of THC to help with sleep. She's taking CBD and CBG. She takes higher amounts, and she stopped harming herself. Like I said, she's not taking any other antipsychotic drugs, and now she can speak. She can say agua, which means water in Portuguese, and she stopped screaming as well. So she learned, or maybe she just found out a way of organizing her brain in a way that now she can say when she needs water. That's the only thing that she can say, and she only discovered that after her treatment with medicinal cannabis. And her whole life is a lot better. Her family's life is a lot better. And yeah, I think that's my most successful story. I still can't believe it. I'm like, whoa.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I work in mental health disability, so I see a lot of a lot of patients like that, and I see the mothers come in and visit and take them shopping, and it's really distressing when they're screaming and you can't do anything about it. They'll hit themselves or they'll hit you, and to go from 7 like psychotic drugs to none, yeah, that's amazing. It shows the power of this plant, and maybe why the research isn't being funded.
Yes.
Maybe, perhaps.
Yeah.
So I want to talk to you a little bit about mental health.
Let's hear it.
9 Australians take their lives a day. 1 in 5 Australians have experienced some sort of mental health disorder the past 12 months. And in America, 25% of people over the age of 18 are on some kind of mental health medication. It's very obvious that there's a mental health crisis at the moment. From being in medicine for 9 years, what's something that you feel the medical world is lacking when it comes to mental health?
That's a very good question. I believe that we are lacking the knowledge of the fact that we're all a part of a whole. So we cannot separate the mind from the body. When I'm talking about mental health, I have to talk about gut health. I have to talk about brain health. I have to talk about traumas, conscious or unconscious. I have to talk about spirituality. I have to talk about your mind and how you cope with your emotions and your stressors. I have to talk about stress levels and the hypervigilant brain. I have to talk about so many things. Your purpose, how are you living your life? The relationships around you. Are you experiencing, have you ever experienced a toxic relationship? So all of those small things that are part of a whole are really important to be addressed when it comes to mental health care. And I think that's pretty much what's lacking in the traditional approach. We want to explain all different mental health conditions by, depression, it's lacking serotonin, let me just give you a pill to help you with that. And it doesn't work. Why? Because we're not just a bag of cells that can be treated as like, just a pill to help you with that. No, none for chronic conditions, none from like mental health conditions. And I really do believe that this increased number of mental health issues are because of mainly 2 reasons. So first of all, because we're so disconnected to our nature as human beings, as people who should be in life, like be connected to the people that we love, be surrounded by things that fulfill our hearts, and just the simple joys of life. Sometimes you're really disconnected, like the way that we relax, just like by scrolling your phones, and that's not something that's helping your brain to actually relax. And also another big factor for me, but that explains a lot, by people getting sicker and sicker in terms of their brains and minds, is because of the overstimulation. So we are being super stimulated all the time. So there's this data that an average person consumes more information during the first 30 minutes upon waking up than the average person would consume in a week back to the 1950s.
Whoa.
So yes, so that's a lot. And this brain here, this software, is not developed to cope and deal with this huge amount of information all the time. So we're being stimulated all the time. And this huge, like fast stimulus all the time keeps depleting our neurochemicals level, keeps depleting our serotonin and dopamine levels, and therefore contributing to create this mental health disorders overall.
Yeah, I think that's a big one, where I heard someone say we're not humans having a spiritual experience, we're spiritual beings having a human experience. And I think sometimes it's very easy to say, oh, there's a chemical imbalance in the brain and this and that, but looking at things more holistically seems to be a better solution for people.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about depression. That's seems to be one of the biggest ones today. A lot of people on antidepressants, and that's rising. How does depression work for humans? And what are your thoughts around depression?
Okay. So the reality is that we don't know much. This whole theory that depression was caused by a lack of serotonin has been proved to be wrong multiple times, but the industry keeps stimulating the prescription of therapies and medication that will only focus on serotonin, and then if it doesn't work, they'll be like, oh, no, so you must be missing adrenaline as well. Then they're using another drug to top that other drug. So yeah, I truly believe that yes, depression is related to this first of all, an inflamed brain. So when you have neuroinflammation, that's called like when your brain is inflamed, you will not produce enough the good chemicals in your brain. You'll not be producing enough serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, and none of that. Because if you think about it, if your brain is is inflamed, if your body and brain are under stress, what it signs to your brain is that you're escaping from a bear, like you're going through a war or something like that. And it's not the time for you to be happy and chill. It's the time for you to be stressed. So it's almost like you have this alarm in your brain all the time. But this alarm is not being caused by you being like chased by a bear or like experiencing a war, like you having a fight with your partner, like you experiencing the daily traffic. So I think this huge amount of stress and also the body's being super inflamed, like the gut being super inflamed, causes a lot of brain inflammation and therefore a lot of chemical imbalances in the brain that's responsible for depression. But I don't think that's it. Like that's all of it. Yes, that plays a big role, but that's not all of it. I think that one thing that's lacking when it comes to depression, especially with young people, is the lack of purpose. And I'm not talking about like the big purpose, like, oh, I'm a doctor, oh, I'm saving lives in Vietnam. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the daily purposes, like, oh, I'm going to have my mom today. Or, oh, no, today I'm going to see my friend and then we're going to go surfing together. Because I think that nowadays with technology, yes, technology is great. I'm so grateful for that. That's how I'm willing to live my life in Australia while still being a doctor in Brazil. But with technology and this mindset that we have nowadays, it's like, oh no, I don't need to do that. Like my mom will find someone else. No, I don't need to do that. Why should I meet my friend if I can just call them? Like, no, we don't have to meet in person. No, why should I be? No, I'm just being my phone. Like, we became lazy and like not willing to do stuff that, I don't know, back in the days people would have to do that will create a sense of purpose. The small things that makes you stimulated to wake up to help other people. And yeah, I think that plays a big role as well.
Yeah, doing things that our species are meant to be doing. I just spent some time on a farm with some family friends who run a massive farm. He's got like 4,500 sheep.
Wow.
And he works really hard, like 12-hour days consistently, 7 days a week, doesn't really have a holiday. And they are some of the happiest, healthiest people. And I was thinking about this and I'm like, they're on the land every day, like actually on the land, in the sun, around animals, around their family, and they're living a life where that's congruent to our species. You mentioned the brain being inflamed and therefore not being able to release all these happy chemicals. Is that right?
Yes.
What causes this inflammation in the brain usually? You said it can be linked to other parts of the body, the gut. Is there other things that maybe humans are doing consistently that are inflaming our brains and therefore not being able to receive this pleasure?
Yes, for sure. So the main causes by my experience and by literature are, first of all, as you said, an inflamed gut. So like gut dysbiosis. So gut dysbiosis, someone who is not eating well, or someone whose body is really inflamed, and this will signal the brain that there is something wrong. So yes, the brain will be inflamed as well. And stress. So stress plays a big role as well. Stress can come from external or internal sources, such as if you have anxiety, for instance, or if you're putting a lot of pressure upon your life and your reality, or if you're actually experiencing some, or for instance, if you have some, if your body is experiencing some disease, it will also cause a lot of internal stress as well. And then stress can come from the outside as well. So those are the main causes for brain inflammation. But when we're talking about the causes of the brain not being able to have the right amount of chemicals, this is not all related to an inflamed brain. What can also happen is our lifestyle. So for example, when it comes to dopamine, if someone has this lifestyle in which they're always searching for instant gratification and like the cheap, fast dopamine sources, their overall dopamine levels will be depleted, because those sources of like cheap, what's called cheap dopamine, will increase dopamine in the brain in a really fast and acute way. So it will be up, down really fast. And when it goes down, it goes down. So the overall result will be someone who is really depleted in dopamine, in serotonin. And this is so funny because when I read The Dopamine Nation, I started to study ADHD. And a lot of people come to me with a clinical suspect of having ADHD. And sometimes when I ask about their lifestyle, like, of course, you're going to have symptoms of ADHD. You wake up, you start vaping, and then you start using your TikTok, and then you're going to like have McDonald's for breakfast or something like that. Your dopamine levels are gone. Of course, you're not going to be able to focus on your boring work that needs to be done, right? So yeah, I think that's another reason why people are getting more and more depressed as well, because we are pretty much depleting all of our good chemicals levels really fast during the day with really like irrelevant and random stuff like that would not add anything to our lives. Like, of course, I believe that a balanced lifestyle will include sometimes like you're going to be watching your favorite TV show sometimes for hours, and sometimes you're going to have like the burger and the milkshake. I think that's fine. That's part of a balanced lifestyle if you don't have any chronic diseases that will prevent you from experiencing that. But it shouldn't be your routine. And for a lot of people, for a lot of young people, this is their routine.
It's a massive one. We definitely live in the time of instant gratification. And it seems the more prevalent that gets, this ADHD follows the trend, right? Like the more screen time we have, the more pornography we watch, the more TikTok we use, the more our diets fade. It's just like ADHD is shooting through the roof. There's got to be a correlation there. A lot of the time, when I'm working with men who have porn addiction, they also self-diagnose themselves with ADHD. And I think due to the amount of dopamine that's produced when you watch porn, it's a lot. Like sex was our biggest dopamine response back when we were primates or cavemen. There was no bigger natural chemical release than, as far as dopamine goes, than sex. So when we're watching sex on a screen and it's exaggerated, it's fake, it's like enhanced to our liking, it's novel, there's always more, there's like an endless supply. So novelty creates more dopamine. you're just absolutely smashing your brain with dopamine, like ridiculously. And I can even relate. I remember when I was watching a lot of porn, surfing wasn't even as much fun, or hanging out with a friend. Like I was always tapping my leg, kind of looking for the next thing. I'd eat crap food. And it was quitting porn and allowing my brain that time to kind of replenish itself that I found more pleasure in the simple joys. And that was really amazing. For someone who maybe has self-diagnosed themselves with ADHD, or knows that they live a lifestyle where they're seeking this instant gratification, they're used to having Maccas for breakfast, they're used to waking up and scrolling TikTok, how do you go about helping them live a more balanced lifestyle where they can have a bit of self-control when it comes to those instant cheap dopamine?
Yeah, I think that if someone has a problem with that, like the first thing is to actually do a detox, like stop vaping, delete TikTok for a while, and try to reach out to the good dopamine sources that would actually increase dopamine levels in your brain in a healthier and for a longer period of time, such as sunlight, nature exposure, exercise, doing new things, creating lists, like achieving the small goals, connecting with other people, listening to music, dancing, the cold plunges. So there are plenty of very good stuff that can help the brains to rewire and to actually get benefit by dopamine instead of being depleted by all of those cheap dopamine sources that will not lead us anywhere but mental health disorders.
Yeah. I think that's important. A lot of the time when people, I keep using porn because it's so relevant in my life, but a lot of the time when people try and quit porn, they just go, okay, I'm just going to remove the porn, and they keep living their life the same way, at least for a bit. But you've got to, like, porn is giving you something, right? Or your addiction is giving you something. This cheap dopamine is giving you, whether it's joy, it's dopamine.
Yeah.
So finding a healthy replacement is quite essential to removing that dopamine.
Yeah. For a lot of people would be exercise and cold plunges. Like that's a big one as well.
Yeah, the dopamine on cold plunges is huge, isn't it? And it's sustained
huge.
for a while.
And sustained,
Yeah.
yes. I am not sure about the specific numbers now, but it's huge. Yes, and it helps a lot of people. The book Dopamine Nation, she talks about, I believe it was a man that was addicted to alcohol, and then she was able to, kill himself with the cold plunges. So that's really good.
It's amazing. Well, Lou, I'm going to go into rapid fire round. This is the fun one. We ask these questions, and then the aim is to try and answer them in under a minute. So I'm going to read them out here. Are you ready?
Yes.
If you could recommend one simple supplement that would help most people, what would it be?
Magnesium.
Why?
Because, first of all, we lack magnesium in the soil, we lack magnesium in our food, and magnesium is essential for us to deal with stress levels, to help with the gut, to help gut balance. And yes, magnesium is just essential. I have a favorite three.
But you can go three.
Okay.
Yeah.
My favorite top three would be magnesium, omega-3, and vitamin D. Yes.
Omega-3, is that because we have too much omega-6 and we need to balance out the omega-3?
Exactly. We have a lot of omega-6 in our diets, and we don't have much omega-3s, and 30% of our brains are made by omega-3. So we need that to make sure that we have a healthy brain. And also, like, omega-3s is really anti-inflammatory. All of those supplements that I mentioned are really anti-inflammatory, and we live a really pro-inflammatory lifestyle. So I think those supplements are really good to help with that. And all of those supplements are really good for mood, depression, anxiety as well.
For someone who believes they need antidepressants but don't really want to take them, or for someone who's currently on them and is looking to remove them from their life, what would your advice be?
Okay. Exercise, So there are a lot of studies showing that 30 minutes a day exercise every day have the same effect of taking antidepressants for low to mild depression, for low to mild depression. So exercise, big one. Second of all, curcumin. So from turmeric.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So curcumin, there are a lot of studies as well showing its antidepressant effect. So big one.
Wow, turmeric, who would have known?
Yeah.
What is one of the most profound pieces of research or findings that you've come across from your time in medicine?
I think the main one is that is actually if we improve our bodies, we can actually improve our minds. I think that's pretty much like I've experienced this so many times. And it is possible to heal diseases that traditional medicine says that it's not, such as like some autoimmune diseases. We don't learn in medical school that we can heal those conditions, but yes, we can. I've seen them like multiple times, like the autoantibodies being become like non, and a person who was super inflamed stop being inflamed at all. So yes, that's possible. It requires effort and time from the person, and yes, but it is possible.
If you could create or change one law, what would it be?
The one that would need a passport to go to like different countries, like it was just like I'm from planet Earth, I can go to wherever I want.
Unity. Nice one. 3 small practical steps someone can take to improve their mental health.
So my 3 non-negotiables are, first of all, everyday nature time. Sometimes it will be windy and rainy, and then I just stay there for like 20 minutes looking at the rain. But 20 minutes a day exposure to nature, that's a big one. Second of all, I believe that planning your day is a big one, especially because we're like overstimulated. So I believe that I like to plan my day at the day before, and I'll notice some people like to wake up and plan the day. And I think that's really helpful so that you know that exactly what you have to do instead of being like having to deal with all of those micro information and decisions that you gotta be doing throughout the day. So yeah, planning the day is a big one. And then third, it would be I would say meditation, but I know that we all know that meditation is good for us. Like we all know that breath work is good for us. So I would say like move your body every day. That's also a big one. If you can plan your day, move your body, and then keep ticking your day, whatever. This will create dopamine, like healthy dopamine levels. This will help you to actually be accountable. And if you move your body every day, if it's like a 10-minute walk, like 10-minute stretch, or a 1-hour yoga, it doesn't matter, like move your body every day. And if you are constantly exposed to nature, I think that those are really helpful 3 things.
Great answer. I'm a big believer in planning your day too. I love writing out my day, and I have like this app that ticks them off, and as soon as you tick them, it puts a big cross through it, and the dopamine when that cross goes through is like, yes.
I don't know about this app, but I'm already interested. Cool.
Yeah, it's called Notion. It's a good app.
Yeah, I know about that. Yes.
Okay. What are you most scared about for the future of the world currently?
What do you mean by what do I most get?
Based off where the world is now and where it's heading, what do you fear the most?
What I fear the most? The AI would dominate us. No, maybe, but
Yeah, that's
no.
a valid one.
Yeah. So a friend of mine, she went to the biggest technology conference in the US, and then she said that they were developing these robots that would able to give us hugs so that we could create oxytocin. And I found that to be extremely bizarre because we're supposed to be hugging other people instead of be creating robots to hug us. So that I have chills. So that we
Yes.
can actually feel oxytocin and serotonin. That's really fucked up. So,
I am very scared about that. I've been watching the porn route with AI, which is really getting out of hand, and there are already underway sex robots.
how does that work?
I don't know. I don't really want to know, but they reckon that in about 5 years, the sex robot industry will be bigger than all box office tickets in Hollywood and all movies. So it's going to be a very big industry, and I'm very fearful of what that will do for people who are lonely or people who don't want to put in effort for connections. Right? If you've got a robot that can speak to you, can give you emotional support, can cook for you, and have sex with you and fulfill your needs, what's going to be the desire to go out and meet a real woman?
Yes.
And that scares me.
And that's something that it doesn't happen in nature. Do you know that in Japan, just like side effect, do you know that in Japan there's actually a place, like a coffee place that you can go with your AI girlfriend? That's so scary.
That is very scary.
Yeah, like there's a screen and then there's your chair and then you can basically just take your girlfriend with you. Yes, you can plug her on the screen. That's so scary, right?
Yeah, I feel like there's going to be a real divide, unfortunately, of people who kind of opt into that style of living and then people who want to stay in the real world and the real connections and putting in effort. Yeah, we'll have to see where that goes.
Yeah.
I have faith in humanity will come
Me too.
through. Do you believe that all cannabis should be legal?
Oh, that's a really tricky one. I believe that adults should have a choice in terms of what they want to consume. They should be educated on like the side effects about everything. And yes, I think it should be legal, but I think that should be different laws. Like medicinal cannabis should be separated from recreational cannabis because it's different grades, it's different purposes, and all of that. So yes, but different laws.
Great answer. So Lou, the final question is a bit of a closing tradition.
Okay.
I ask all of my guests this, and the question is, if you could advise one practical step that would positively impact individuals and society as a whole, what would that practical step be?
Whenever you're talking to someone, look into their eyes. Like, I think that's a good one because, yeah, be willing to connect with people that you love in person whenever you can. Like, don't be lazy about that. Like, do it. The effort is valid.
Amazing. I love that answer. Everyone always provides such different answers and they're all so great. Thank you for that, Lou.
Okay.
Where can people find you if they want to know more about you or if they want to keep up to date with this study you're doing around anxiety and medicinal cannabis? I know I want to stay up to date with that. That sounds very amazing. And I really look forward to seeing what you find there. So yeah, tell the viewers where they can find you and this stuff.
My Instagram, which is at Vinhal. And yeah, I'm always posting. I sometimes post in Portuguese. I have to like keep telling myself that I have to post more in English. But as soon as I have more results about my study, I can definitely send it to you and then post in my social media as well. And I also have a podcast, but it's in Portuguese. So sorry, guys. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, I'll put that Instagram handle in the comment section so that people can reach out to you. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been great talking to you.
I loved it. Thank you.